The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the bustling streets of Lahore as Amina hurried home from university. Her phone buzzed with a message that made her heart skip. Meeting at the old bookshop at 4? It was from Farhan, her cousin, but more importantly, the person who had captured her heart completely. Amina and Farhan had grown up in the same extended family, attending the same family gatherings since they were children, but something changed when they entered their teenage years. What started as innocent conversations about books and films gradually transformed into something deeper. Something they both knew would raise eyebrows in their traditional family. They belonged to a respectable middle-class family in Lahore, where customs and traditions were held in high regard. Both sets of parents lived in neighboring houses in the same colony, a common arrangement that allowed the extended family to remain close-knit. This closeness, ironically, had given Amina and Farhan countless opportunities to develop their bond, far from anyone's suspicion. At 25, Amina had just completed her master's degree in literature. With her bright eyes and quick wit, she had no shortage of proposals coming her way, all of which she politely declined, much to her mother's frustration. Farhan, 2 years older, worked at a software company downtown. Tall and thoughtful, he was the pride of his parents who had also begun the process of finding him a suitable match. The old bookshop had become their sanctuary over the years. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of the city, it was owned by an elderly man who barely looked up from his newspaper when customers walked in. The dusty shelves and the smell of old pages created the perfect backdrop for their secret meetings. "You're late," Farhan said with a smile as Amina slipped through the narrow doorway of the shop, adjusting her dupatta over her shoulders. "Ami wanted me to meet another perfect match this afternoon," she replied, rolling her eyes. "A doctor this time." His mother couldn't stop talking about their new house in Defense. Farhan's smile faded slightly. He pulled out a worn copy of Faiz Ahmed Faiz's poetry from the shelf, pretending to be interested in it. "And what did you think of him?" "What do you think?" Amina raised an eyebrow. "I told them I'm focusing on my career right now." Relief washed over Farhan's face, but it was quickly replaced by worry. "We can't keep doing this forever, Amina. Sooner or later, we'll have to make a decision." The weight of his words hung between them. They had been dancing around this conversation for months now. Both knew that what they felt for each other wasn't just a passing fancy, but something that had grown steadily over years of shared dreams and understanding. "I know," Amina whispered, her fingers tracing the spine of a book without really seeing it. "But you know how our families will react. Cousin marriages might be acceptable in our culture, but not when the couple has chosen each other. They'll say we've brought shame to the family." Farhan moved closer, making sure the shopkeeper couldn't see them from his position. "I've been thinking about this a lot. Maybe it's time we stop hiding. We're not teenagers anymore. We have careers. We can support ourselves." The thought sent a shiver of both excitement and fear through Amina. To finally acknowledge their feelings openly, to stop living in the shadows, it seemed both liberating and terrifying. "What about your parents?" she asked. "Your father has already shortlisted 3 girls from respectable families." "He told my father about it last week." Farhan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Amina knew meant he was gathering courage. "Let them shortlist 100 girls. It won't change how I feel about you." A customer walked into the shop, causing them to step away from each other instinctively. Years of secrecy had made them cautious. They pretended to browse through different sections until the customer left. "I've saved enough money," Farhan continued once they were alone again. "We could get our own place, maybe in Johar Town. It's far enough from our families, but still in the city." Amina's heart raced at the possibility. A place of their own, where they wouldn't have to hide their glances or measure their words, where they could simply be. "Do you really think we can do this?" she asked, hope and doubt battling in her voice. Farhan reached for her hand hidden between the tall bookshelves. "I know we can, but only if we're in this together." Their conversation was interrupted by the ringing of Amina's phone. It was her mother, wondering where she had disappeared to after her classes. With a sigh, Amina promised to head home immediately. As they prepared to leave the bookshop separately, another precaution they had learned to take, Farhan stopped her. "Think about it. But remember, I'm not asking you to choose between me and your family. I'm asking you to give us a chance to make our own family. Those words stayed with Amina as she walked home, her mind a whirlwind of possibilities and fears. The narrow streets of their neighborhood felt suffocating suddenly, the familiar houses with their watchful windows like sentinels guarding tradition. At home, her mother was busy preparing dinner, her hands expertly kneading dough for rotis. "Where were you?" Nadia's mother called. "She wants to know if you're interested in meeting her nephew." He settled in Dubai, another proposal, another expectation. Amina helped her mother in the kitchen, her movements automatic while her mind wandered to Farhan and their conversation. Later that night, as the household settled into silence, Amina sat by her window watching the stars. Her phone lit up with a message from Farhan. "Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But know that what we have is rare. Some people go through life without finding it even once." Tears blurred her vision as she typed back, "I'm scared of losing my family." His reply came instantly. "I'm scared too, but I'm more scared of looking back years from now and wondering what could have been." The next few weeks passed in a blur of secret meetings and late-night conversations. They weighed their options, considered every possible outcome. They researched the Islamic perspective on cousin marriages, finding that while it was permitted, opinions varied based on different interpretations. One evening, as they sat on a bench in the public park, another one of their meeting spots, Farhan showed Amina the keys to an apartment he had rented. "Just to see," he clarified quickly. No pressure, but they both felt it. The pressure of time, of decisions that needed to be made, of lives that were waiting to be lived. The turning point came during a family wedding. As relatives gossiped about love marriages and the decline of traditional values, Amina caught Farhan's eye across the room. In that moment, surrounded by the very people who would oppose their union, they made their decision. The next day, they met at the bookshop one last time. "Are you sure?" Farhan asked, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying his nervousness. Amina nodded, a sense of calm settling over her. "I'm sure. It won't be easy, but nothing worth having ever is." They decided to speak to their parents separately, then together as a united front. They prepared for the worst: disownment, emotional manipulation, community backlash, but they also allowed themselves to hope for understanding, for acceptance, for the chance to love openly. As Amina walked home that day, the streets of Lahore seemed different somehow, both familiar and new, like she was seeing them through fresh eyes. The weight of secrecy had been replaced by the weight of anticipation. Tomorrow they would begin the most challenging chapter of their story, but for now, for this moment suspended between past and future, Amina felt a strange mix of fear and freedom. She looked up at the vast sky above, the same sky that had witnessed countless love stories throughout history, some celebrated, others forbidden. Their story was just one among many, yet to them it was everything. With a deep breath, she stepped into her house, ready to face whatever came next. For love, true love, was worth the risk. The morning sun filtered through the curtains as Amina sat at the edge of her bed, rehearsing the words she would say to her parents. Today was the day. She and Farhan had agreed to speak to their respective families before sunset. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her phone to check if there was any message from him. There was, "Whatever happens, remember why we're doing this. I'll come to your house at 7. Downstairs." She could hear her mother humming while preparing breakfast, and her father clearing his throat as he read the newspaper. Ordinary sounds of an ordinary day that was about to become anything but ordinary. Amina's mother looked up as she entered the kitchen. "You're up early for a Sunday," she remarked, placing a plate of paratha on the table. "I need to talk to you and Abu," Amina said, her voice steadier than she expected. "It's important." Something in her tone made her mother pause. She wiped her hands on her apron and called out to Amina's father. "Javed, come here. Amina wants to talk to us." They sat around the kitchen table, the steam from the fresh tea creating a temporary barrier between them. Amina took a deep breath and began the speech she had practiced countless times in her mind. "I know you both want what's best for me," she started. "You've always given me freedom to study, to work. You've supported my dreams." She paused, gathering courage. "But there's something I haven't told you. Something important." Her father frowned, setting down his newspaper. "What is it, Beta? Is everything all right at university?" "It's not about university," Amina replied. "It's about my future." About who I want to spend my life with. Her mother's eyes lit up with interest. Have you finally decided to meet Nadia's nephew? I told you he's a good boy. No, Ami. Amina interrupted gently. I've already met the person I want to marry. She swallowed hard before continuing. It's Farhan Chacha's son. The silence that followed was deafening. Her father's face, normally so expressive, became unreadable. Her mother's hand froze midway to her teacup. Farhan? Her mother finally whispered. Your cousin Farhan? Amina nodded, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure they could hear it. We've known each other all our lives. We understand each other. We love each other. Her father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. He is your cousin, not some boy you met at university that you can claim to love. Abu, please, no. His voice rose, something rare in their household. Do you have any idea what you're saying? What people will think? That we raised a daughter who chose her own cousin as if this is some kind of film? Her mother reached for her husband's arm, trying to calm him. Javed, lower your voice. The neighbors will hear. Let them hear, he replied. Though he did lower his voice somewhat, maybe shame will knock some sense into her. Into both of you. Tears welled up in Amina's eyes, but she blinked them back. She had prepared for this reaction. It's not wrong, she said quietly. Cousin marriages happen in our culture. In our religion, don't you dare use religion to justify this, her father cut in. Yes, cousin marriages happen. When families decide together, when elders approve, when there's proper consideration, not when two young people get carried away with silly feelings. Her mother finally found her voice. How long has this been going on? Behind our backs? Amina hesitated. We've been close for years, but we've only discussed marriage recently. We wanted to do things properly, that's why I'm talking to you now. Properly? Her father laughed bitterly. There's nothing proper about this. What about Farhan's parents? Do they know their son has lost his mind? He's telling them right now, Amina replied, glancing at the clock. It was just past noon. Farhan would be having a similar conversation across the street. The hours that followed were a blur of arguments, tears, and stony silences. Her mother vacillated between anger and pleading, while her father retreated into cold disappointment. By late afternoon, the news had spread to other family members. Amina's phone buzzed constantly with messages from cousins and aunts, some curious, others judgmental. At exactly 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Despite her mother's attempt to stop her, Amina rushed to open it. Farhan stood there, his face drawn but determined. Behind him were his parents, her uncle and aunt, both wearing expressions that mirrored her own parents. We need to talk, Farhan's father said grimly, addressing Amina's father, who had appeared in the hallway. The two families gathered in the living room, an uncomfortable silence settling over them. It was Farhan who spoke first. Uncle, Auntie, he addressed Amina's parents respectfully. I understand you're upset, but what Amina and I feel for each other is real. We've thought this through carefully. Thought it through, Farhan's mother scoffed. You're both being selfish and foolish. Do you have any idea how this looks? What people will say? We don't care what people say, Amina replied, finding strength in Farhan's presence. We care about being happy, about building a life with someone we truly love and respect. Love, her uncle spat out the word as if it tasted bitter. What do you two know about love? About commitment? About the hardships of marriage? Farhan remained calm. We know enough. We're not teenagers. We have careers, savings. We can support ourselves. This isn't about money, Amina's father interjected. This is about respect, about tradition, about doing things the right way. What is the right way, Abu? Amina challenged. Marrying someone I barely know because he has a good job and comes from a respectable family? How is that better than choosing someone I've known all my life? Someone whose values and character I trust completely. The argument went in circles, with both sets of parents alternating between threats and emotional appeals. They brought up concerns about genetic risks, though neither family had hereditary health issues. They talked about social ostracism, about how other relatives would cut ties with them. If you do this, Farhan's father finally declared, you are no longer my son. I cannot stop you legally, but I can choose not to witness this mistake. Farhan paled but stood his ground. I'm sorry you feel that way, Abu. I love and respect you, but I won't let anyone, not even you, decide who I should spend my life with. Similar ultimatums came from Amina's parents. By the time the night ended, both Amina and Farhan had been given the same choice: forget this nonsense or leave their families behind. They left together, Amina quickly packing a small bag with essentials while her mother wept and her father refused to look at her. They went to the apartment Farhan had rented, a modest 2-bedroom flat in Johar town, far from their family homes. That night, sitting on the bare floor of their new home, surrounded by Amina's hastily packed bags and the few pieces of furniture Farhan had bought, they held each other and allowed themselves to finally break down. Did we make a mistake? Amina whispered through her tears. Farhan tightened his arm around her shoulders. No, it's hard now, but they'll come around. They love us. They're just shocked and worried about what others will think. And if they don't come around, then we'll build our own family, he replied softly. One where love comes before tradition, where happiness matters more than appearances. In the days that followed, they reached out to friends who might help them navigate this new reality. To their surprise, some younger cousins secretly expressed support, though none dared to do so openly for fear of family backlash. They also sought advice from a progressive religious scholar who confirmed that while cousin marriages were permitted in Islam, the religion also emphasized the importance of free consent in marriage, something their families seemed to have overlooked in their anger. With trembling hands but resolute hearts, they applied for a marriage license. The official who processed their paperwork raised an eyebrow at their shared family name but asked no questions. They set a date for a simple ceremony at the local registry office with only a handful of friends as witnesses. A week before the wedding, Amina's younger sister Zara sneaked out to meet them at a cafe. Ami cries every night, she told them. Abu doesn't talk about you at all, which means he thinks about you all the time. Will you come to the wedding? Amina asked hopefully. Zara looked down at her hands. I can't. They'd never forgive me, but... She reached into her bag and pulled out a small package. Ami's earrings, the ones Nani gave her on her wedding day. She doesn't know I took them, but I think you should have them. Amina's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the gift, a silent blessing from a home that had declared her unwelcome. The night before their wedding, Farhan and Amina sat on their small balcony, looking at the stars over Lahore. The same stars that had witnessed countless love stories throughout the centuries. Some celebrated, others forbidden. No matter what happens tomorrow, Farhan said, taking her hand. Remember that we chose this. We chose each other, and I will choose you every day for the rest of my life. Amina leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling both the weight of what they had lost and the promise of what they were about to gain. Tomorrow they would become husband and wife. Tomorrow they would begin writing their own story, one where love was brave enough to challenge tradition. I choose you too, she whispered back. Today, tomorrow, and always. The morning of the wedding arrived with a gentle sunrise that painted the Lahore sky in shades of pink and gold. Amina stood by the window of their small apartment, watching the city slowly come to life. Street vendors were setting up their carts. Early morning workers hurried to catch buses, and the call to Fajr prayer had just ended. It felt strange that the world continued its normal rhythm on a day that would change her life forever. Behind her on the bed lay the simple white and gold outfit she had bought for the occasion. Not the heavily embroidered red bridal dress she had once imagined wearing, surrounded by singing relatives and childhood friends. This was different, simpler, quieter, but somehow more meaningful because it represented a choice they had made together. Are you ready? Farhan's voice came from the doorway. He was already dressed in a crisp white shalwar kameez with a golden embroidered waistcoat. Amina turned to him with a smile that held both joy and sadness. Almost, I just need to get dressed and do my makeup. Farhan nodded, understanding the complexity of emotions behind her words. I made tea, and Imran called. He and Sana will meet us at the registry office at 10. Imran was Farhan's colleague who had stood by them throughout the past difficult weeks, offering not just moral support but practical help as well. His wife Sana had helped Amina find the outfit and had insisted on bringing flowers and sweets for the small celebration afterward. Did anyone else respond? Amina asked hesitantly, though she already knew the answer. Farhan's eyes softened with sympathy. Not from the immediate family, but cousin Bilal sent a message wishing us well. He can't come either. He's afraid of how his parents would react, but he wanted us to know he's thinking of us. It was more than they had expected, yet still less than they had hoped for. They had sent simple invitation messages to select family members, knowing most would not attend but unable to completely let go of the hope that someone might defy the family decision and stand with them. As Amina got ready, she placed her mother's earrings, the ones her sister Zara had smuggled to her, in her ears. The familiar weight of them against her neck was comforting, a small piece of home and heritage she could carry with her. She applied light makeup, lined her eyes with kohl, and dabbed on a touch of her favorite rose perfume. When she emerged from the bedroom, Farhan was waiting with a small velvet box. "I wanted to give you this now before we leave," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold pendant with an intricate design of 2 intertwined flowers. "It's beautiful," Amina whispered as he fastened it around her neck. "The shopkeeper told me it represents 2 souls growing together," Farhan explained. "I thought it was fitting." They shared a quiet breakfast, talking about practical matters to keep the nervousness at bay, the lease agreement they needed to renew next month, the job interview Amina had scheduled for the following week, the household items they still needed to buy. At 9:30, they left their apartment and hailed a rickshaw to take them to the registry office. The driver, noticing Amina's outfit and the small bouquet of roses she carried, offered his congratulations. "No family with you?" he asked innocently. "They'll meet us there," Farhan replied smoothly, saving them both from the painful explanation. The registry office was a plain government building with peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights, a far cry from the lavishly decorated wedding halls where most Lahori couples celebrated their unions. They found Imran and Sana waiting outside along with 2 other friends who had promised to attend. "You look beautiful," Sana told Amina, embracing her warmly, like a true bride. The small group made their way inside, navigating the bureaucratic process with the help of a clerk who had been briefed beforehand. As they waited for their turn, Amina found herself glancing repeatedly at the entrance, a part of her still hoping that someone, her mother, her father, even an aunt or uncle, might appear at the last minute. No one did. When their names were called, Amina and Farhan stood before the official with their friends as witnesses. The ceremony was brief and straightforward, a stark contrast to the 3-day celebrations that typically marked Pakistani weddings. They signed the necessary documents, exchanged simple rings, and just like that, they were husband and wife. "I now pronounce you legally married," the official declared, barely looking up from his paperwork. "Congratulations." Outside the building, their friends showered them with flower petals they had brought in small paper bags. Someone took pictures with a phone, capturing smiles that were genuine despite the circumstances. They went to a nearby restaurant for a modest lunch where Imran raised a toast with mango juice. "To Amina and Farhan," he said, "who taught us all that love sometimes requires courage." The afternoon passed pleasantly in the company of the few who had chosen to support them. For a few hours, they managed to set aside the pain of family rejection and focus instead on the joy of beginning their life together. It was late afternoon when they returned to their apartment, now officially their marital home. Sana had insisted on coming along to help them decorate the bedroom with flower garlands and scented candles, a nod to traditional wedding night customs. "It's not much," she apologized, looking around the simply furnished flat. "But it's a start." "It's perfect," Amina assured her, genuinely touched by the gesture. After their friends left with promises to check in the next day, Amina and Farhan found themselves alone as husband and wife for the first time. The reality of what they had done, the bridges they had burned, the new path they had forged, seemed to settle over them. "No regrets?" Farhan asked softly, taking her hand. Amina looked around their small living room, at the mismatched furniture and the few wedding gifts their friends had brought. It was nothing like the lavish start most newlyweds in their community received, with fully furnished homes and substantial financial support from both families. Yet there was something deeply satisfying about knowing that everything here was theirs, earned or chosen by them alone. "No regrets," she confirmed, "though I do miss them." "Is that strange? To miss people who turned their backs on us?" "Not strange at all," Farhan replied, pulling her close. They're our family. We're allowed to miss them while still standing by our decision. That evening, they sat on their small balcony, sharing a simple dinner they had prepared together. The sounds of the city, car horns, distant music, children playing in the street below, created a backdrop to their conversation as they planned their future. "We should take some wedding photos tomorrow," Farhan suggested. "Professional ones. Just because our wedding was small doesn't mean we shouldn't have memories to look back on." Amina agreed. "And I want to put some up on social media. I know it might upset the family, but I don't want to hide as if we've done something wrong." They discussed other plans too, saving for a proper honeymoon. Perhaps to the northern areas of Pakistan where they could see the mountains. How they would divide household chores. What they would do if their families eventually reached out. "Do you think they will?" Amina asked. "Reach out, I mean. Accept us eventually." Farhan considered the question carefully. "I think some will. Maybe not right away, but over time. Love tends to win over anger, especially in families. And if they don't, then we'll create our own family," he said, echoing what he had told her the night they left their homes. "With friends who become like siblings, with children of our own someday. Family isn't just about blood." Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Amina checked her phone one last time. There were several messages from friends who couldn't attend but sent their best wishes. And to her surprise, a text from her sister Zara. "Ami asked about you today. Didn't say much, just wanted to know if I'd heard from you. I think she misses you. Be happy, Appa. You deserve it." It wasn't forgiveness or acceptance, but it was something. A tiny crack in the wall of silence that had been built between her and her family. Amina showed the message to Farhan, who smiled hopefully. "See? One day at a time." They fell asleep holding each other, their wedding day behind them and an uncertain but promising future ahead. Outside, the city of Lahore continued its nighttime rhythm. Cars honking, neighbors chatting, the occasional sound of laughter from a nearby restaurant. Life went on, and now they were part of it together. Not as cousins who shared family gatherings, but as husband and wife who shared a life. Morning arrived with sunlight streaming through the curtains they had forgotten to close. Amina woke first, taking a moment to absorb the reality of where she was and who lay beside her. Her husband. The word still felt new and wonderful. She slipped out of bed quietly and made her way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. As she moved around the small space, setting water to boil for tea and cutting fruit for their meal, she hummed softly to herself. There was pain still, yes. The absence of family cast a shadow that couldn't be ignored. But there was also a profound sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was meant to be. Farhan joined her a few minutes later, his hair tousled from sleep. "Good morning, Mrs. Farhan," he said with a smile that lit up his eyes. "Good morning, husband," she replied, returning his smile. Their first day as a married couple had begun, the first of many in a journey they had chosen despite all odds. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, bound not just by blood ties or cultural traditions, but by a love that had proved stronger than both. The first 2 days of Amina and Farhan's married life passed in a bubble of cautious happiness. They spent their time arranging their small apartment, taking the wedding photos they had planned, and enjoying the simple pleasure of being together without having to watch the clock or make excuses to family members. On the evening of their second day as husband and wife, they decided to celebrate properly. Farhan brought home roses and a small cake from the bakery near his office. Amina cooked his favorite biryani, filling their apartment with the aromatic scent of spices. They ate by candlelight on their small balcony, the sounds of the city creating a backdrop to their conversation. "I uploaded our pictures," Amina said, showing Farhan her phone screen where their wedding photos now appeared on her social media profile. They were simple images, the two of them outside the registry office sharing cake with their small group of friends, a close-up of their hands with the new wedding bands. "Nothing extravagant, but meaningful nonetheless. Any reactions?" Farhan asked, knowing that this public announcement was their way of making their marriage official to the wider world, including their extended family who hadn't been told directly. Amina scrolled through the notifications. "Some friends from university have congratulated us. A few distant relatives too, mostly younger cousins." She paused, her finger hovering over the screen. "No one from immediate family yet." Farhan reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "Give them time. It's only been 2 days." After dinner, they washed the dishes together, Amina washing while Farhan dried, establishing the comfortable domestic rhythm they hoped would carry them through the years ahead. The new water heater in their bathroom, installed just days before they moved in, made the task easier, providing hot water without the need to boil it first. "Should we watch something?" Farhan suggested, gesturing toward the small television they had bought secondhand. Amina shook her head, stifling a yawn. "I'm actually quite tired. Mind if we just go to bed early?" "Of course not," Farhan replied with an understanding smile. "I'm feeling a bit dizzy myself. Must be all the excitement catching up with us." They prepared for bed, going through the new routines they were still getting used to, sharing the bathroom mirror as they brushed their teeth, Amina applying her night cream while Farhan checked that the door was locked. Small, ordinary moments that felt extraordinary, simply because they were experiencing them together. "I have a bit of a headache," Amina mentioned as they settled into bed. "Do we have any painkillers?" Farhan nodded, getting up to fetch them from the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. He returned with 2 tablets and a glass of water. "Here you go. Maybe it's the weather changing, or stress catching up with you." "Probably," Amina agreed, taking the medicine gratefully. "It's been an emotional few weeks." They lay side by side, in the darkness, talking softly about their plans for the next day. Farhan needed to return to work after taking 2 days off for the wedding. Amina had her job interview at a local publishing house, a prospect that both excited and nervous her. "You'll do brilliantly," Farhan assured her, his voice already heavy with approaching sleep. "They'd be lucky to have you." "I hope so," Amina murmured, feeling her own eyelids growing heavy. "A second income would help us save faster for a better place." "This place isn't so bad," Farhan replied, glancing around their modest bedroom, just visible in the dim light from the street lamp outside. "It's our first home together. I'll always remember it fondly." Amina smiled at that, touched by his ability to find joy in their circumstances despite all they had given up to be together. "Me too," she whispered, nestling closer to him. "Good night, husband." "Good night, wife," he replied, kissing her forehead gently before they both drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Ali, the building's security guard, was making his usual rounds when he noticed the newspapers still sitting outside the door of apartment 304, the newly married couple's flat. It was unusual. The husband, Farhan was his name, always collected the paper early before leaving for work. Ali checked his watch. It was nearly 9 o'clock. Strange that there was no movement from the apartment, especially since Farhan had mentioned he would be returning to work today. Perhaps they were still sleeping in. Newlyweds, after all. By 11 o'clock, Ali's casual curiosity had turned to concern. He had seen all the other residents of the building leave for their daily routines, but apartment 304 remained silent. No sound of movement, no opening or closing of doors. He tried calling the number Farhan had given him when they moved in. The phone rang inside the apartment. He could hear it faintly through the door, but no one answered. Maybe they went out early and forgot their phone, Ali's wife suggested when he mentioned his concerns during his lunch break. Or maybe they went to visit family. Ali shook his head. "Their shoes are still by the door. I can see them through the gap underneath." By late afternoon, unable to shake his growing unease, Ali decided to use his master key. He knocked loudly first, calling out their names. When there was still no response, he unlocked the door. The apartment was quiet and undisturbed. Nothing seemed out of place. The dishes from their dinner still sat on the drying rack. 2 teacups were on the bedside table. And on the bed, Amina and Farhan lay as if asleep, their bodies still and unmoving in a peaceful embrace. Ali's shout brought neighbors running. Someone called an ambulance, someone else called the police, but it was too late. The young couple was already gone, having passed away sometime during the night. News of the tragedy spread quickly through the building, then to the neighborhood, and finally to the families who had disowned them just days earlier. The small apartment building became the center of frenzied activity. Police officers cordoned off the area. Medical personnel moved efficiently but respectfully around the scene. Neighbors gathered in small groups, speaking in hushed voices. speculating about what might have happened to the young couple who had just begun their life together. "They seemed so happy yesterday," said the elderly woman from apartment 305, wiping tears from her eyes. "I saw them on their balcony having dinner by candlelight." "No signs of forced entry," a police officer noted, making entries in his notebook. "No visible injuries, no indications of foul play." "Could it be suicide?" someone whispered, though no one wanted to say it aloud. "Because of the family issues?" But those who had spoken to the couple recently immediately rejected the idea. "Absolutely not," insisted Imran, Farhan's colleague, who had rushed to the scene after hearing the news. "They were planning their future. Amina had a job interview today. Farhan was excited about a new project at work." As evening fell, the most heartbreaking scene unfolded. Two sets of parents, who had refused to attend their children's wedding just days ago, arrived almost simultaneously, their faces etched with grief and shock. Amina's mother collapsed at the entrance to the building, wailing in a way that brought tears to the eyes of even the most hardened police officers. Her husband, ashen-faced and suddenly looking decades older, had to be supported by relatives. Farhan's parents stood in stunned silence, his father repeatedly shaking his head as if denying what he was being told, his mother clutching a framed photo of her son that she had brought with her. In the midst of this chaos, the medical examiner made a preliminary assessment. "No obvious cause of death," he informed the police inspector quietly. "We'll need to conduct a full autopsy, but I'm suspecting some form of poisoning or asphyxiation." The families, once divided by anger over the marriage, now found themselves united in grief. They sat together in the building's small reception area, former arguments forgotten in the face of their shared loss. They just wanted to be together. Amina's sister Zara sobbed, showing everyone the last text message she had received from Amina, a picture of the couple smiling on their balcony with the caption, "Day 2 of happily ever after." As night fell, the bodies of Amina and Farhan were respectfully removed from the apartment and taken to the hospital for further examination. Their families followed, a somber procession of cars moving slowly through the streets of Lahore. The apartment was sealed off as a potential crime scene, though the police had found no evidence of foul play. Yellow tape across the door marked what had briefly been a home filled with hope and new beginnings. In the days that followed, rumors spread throughout the community. Some whispered about family honor killings, despite the genuine grief displayed by both sets of parents. Others suggested divine punishment for defying family wishes, a notion that religious leaders quickly denounced as superstitious and cruel. The media picked up the story, turning the tragedy of two young lives cut short into sensational headlines. "Newlywed cousins found dead. Love marriage ends in tragedy. Star-crossed lovers' mysterious end." For the families, the pain was compounded by public scrutiny and speculation. They had to face not only their grief but also their regret. The harsh words they couldn't take back. The wedding they had refused to attend. The happiness they had denied their children in the name of tradition and pride. "I didn't even see her. In her wedding clothes," Amina's mother lamented during the funeral preparations. "My only daughter, and I wasn't there to see her become a bride." Farhan's father, a man known for his stoic demeanor, broke down completely when sorting through his son's belongings from the apartment. He found a letter Farhan had started writing to him, seeking reconciliation. It began, "Abu, I understand your anger, but I hope one day you will understand our love." The letter remained unfinished, a poignant symbol of conversations that would never happen, of bridges that could never be rebuilt. As the investigation continued, police interviewed everyone who had contact with the couple in their final days: friends, neighbors, the registry office clerk, even the baker who had sold them their celebration cake. Everyone described the same thing: a young couple, very much in love, looking forward to building a life together despite the obstacles they had faced. The building manager was questioned about the apartment itself. "It was renovated just before they moved in," he explained. "New paint, new bathroom fixtures, new kitchen appliances. We wanted it to be nice for them." "Who did the renovations?" the inspector asked. "A local contractor. Does good work, fair prices. He's done several units in the building. The inspector made a note of the name, another detail in the growing file of a case that continued to baffle authorities. How could two healthy young people simply not wake up, with no signs of struggle, no evidence of intentional harm either by themselves or others? As the sun set on the third day after the discovery, the city of Lahore continued its normal rhythms around the small drama that had unfolded in one ordinary apartment. Traffic jammed the streets, vendors called out their wares, children played in parks. But for two families united too late by tragedy, time seemed to stand still as they waited for answers about why their children, who had fought so hard to be together in life, had left this world together after just 2 days of marriage. 5 days after the bodies of Amina and Farhan were discovered, their families sat in a sparse waiting room at the Lahore General Hospital. The once warring parents now huddled together in shared grief, waiting for the medical examiner to explain what had taken their children so suddenly. The door opened, and Dr. Khalid entered, carrying a folder thick with papers. His face was solemn but professional as he greeted the families. "Thank you for your patience during this difficult time," he began, taking a seat across from them. "I know you've been waiting for answers, and I believe we now have them." Amina's father leaned forward, his hands trembling slightly. Was it something they did to themselves? The question that had haunted him for days finally escaped his lips. Dr. Khalid shook his head firmly. "No, sir. This was not suicide. There was no evidence of any self-harm or intentional ingestion of harmful substances." A collective sigh of relief passed through the room. Despite their differences with their children, neither family had truly believed Amina and Farhan would take their own lives. They had seemed too happy, too full of plans for the future. Then what happened to them? Farhan's mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They were young, healthy. How could they both just not wake up? Dr. Khalid opened the folder and adjusted his glasses. The cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning. The words hung in the air for a moment before Amina's mother broke the silence. Carbon monoxide? What is that? How did it happen? Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas, Dr. Khalid explained gently. It's produced when fuel-burning appliances don't get enough air to burn completely. When inhaled, it prevents oxygen from reaching your organs. The victims often fall asleep and simply don't wake up. Farhan's father's face contorted with confusion and grief. But what in their apartment would cause this? They had just moved in. Everything was new. That's where the police investigation comes in, Dr. Khalid said, nodding toward the door as Inspector Raza entered the room. The inspector greeted the families respectfully before turning to the matter at hand. We've completed our inspection of the apartment building, he explained. The source of the carbon monoxide was the water heater in the bathroom. It was improperly installed during recent renovations. The water heater? Farhan's mother repeated, trying to make sense of the information. Inspector Raza nodded. The contractor who renovated the apartment installed a new water heater, but he failed to properly ventilate it. The exhaust pipe that should carry the gas outside was improperly connected, causing carbon monoxide to leak into the apartment. The revelation hit the families like a physical blow. Such a simple thing, a careless installation, a technical error, had stolen their children's lives. So it was an accident? Amina's father asked, his voice breaking. Just an accident? Yes, the inspector confirmed. A tragic accident that could have happened to anyone living in that apartment. The room fell silent as the families absorbed this information. Their children hadn't been punished by fate or God for defying tradition. They hadn't taken their own lives in despair. They had simply been the victims of someone else's negligence. The contractor has been taken in for questioning, Inspector Raza continued. There will be charges for negligence resulting in death, and we're inspecting all other units he renovated in that building and elsewhere. Farhan's father stood up suddenly, his face flushed with anger. My son and his wife died because someone couldn't do their job properly. Because someone was careless? Dr. Khalid intervened gently. Unfortunately, carbon monoxide poisoning is more common than people realize. The gas gives no warning, no smell, no color, no taste. Without a detector, people don't know they're in danger until it's too late. Did they suffer? Amina's mother asked, the question that had been tormenting her since she'd learned of her daughter's death. No, Dr. Khalid assured her. The levels in their bloodstream indicate they would have fallen asleep and passed peacefully, without pain or awareness. They would have felt drowsy, perhaps experienced mild headaches, but then simply fallen asleep. It was small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. At least their children hadn't suffered in their final moments. As the families left the hospital, the weight of regret hung heavier than ever. Not only had they lost their children, but they had lost them without reconciliation, without witnessing their happiness, without being part of their brief married life. They died thinking we hated them, Amina's mother sobbed as they walked to their cars. My last words to my daughter were in anger. Farhan's father, who had been the most opposed to the marriage, placed a hesitant hand on her shoulder. They knew we loved them, he said, though doubt colored his words. Even in our anger, they must have known that. The funeral was held the next day, with both families agreeing that Amina and Farhan should be buried side by side. It was a large gathering, far larger than their wedding had been. Relatives who had refused to acknowledge their marriage came to mourn their deaths. Friends from university and work shared stories of how happy the couple had been in their final days. Zara, Amina's sister, spoke through tears about the text messages and photos her sister had sent from their new home. They were so happy, she told the gathered mourners. They had made their apartment beautiful with just a few things. They had so many plans. Imran, Farhan's colleague, described how excited Farhan had been to return to work. He told me he was the luckiest man in Lahore, Imran recalled. That even though they had faced opposition, he believed their families would come around eventually because love always finds a way. As the funeral ended and the families returned to their homes that felt emptier than ever, a new chapter began. A chapter of processing not just grief but regret, of finding ways to honor the children they had failed to support in life. 2 weeks after the funeral, the families met again, this time at Amina's parents' home. The atmosphere was solemn but no longer hostile. Their shared loss had dissolved the barriers between them. The inspector called, Farhan's father informed the others. The contractor has been charged. He cut corners on ventilation to save money. The building owner is also facing charges for not having proper inspections done. Amina's mother shook her head sadly. It won't bring them back. No, agreed Farhan's mother. Nothing will. But perhaps we can prevent this from happening to someone else. The conversation that followed was difficult but necessary. They discussed their regrets, their failure to put their children's happiness above tradition and pride. They shared stories of Amina and Farhan growing up, remembering the cousins who had always been close, who had found in each other what many spend lifetimes searching for. I keep thinking, said Amina's father, his voice rough with emotion, that if we had accepted them, they might have stayed here in one of our homes until they found a better place. They wouldn't have been in that apartment. No one contradicted him. The same thought had haunted all of them. As the weeks passed, the families remained united in their grief. They established the Amina and Farhan Foundation, with 2 main goals: promoting awareness about carbon monoxide safety and providing support for young couples facing family opposition to their marriages. Our children died from carbon monoxide, Farhan's father explained at the foundation's first public event. But they were already suffering from our rejection. We can't change what happened to them, but we can try to create something meaningful from our loss. They worked with local authorities to draft stricter building safety codes, requiring proper installation of fuel-burning appliances and mandatory carbon monoxide detectors in all residential buildings. They donated detectors to low-income neighborhoods and created educational materials in Urdu and English. The foundation also offered counseling services for couples and families, navigating the complicated terrain of love marriages in a traditional society. They created a safe space where both generations could voice their concerns and work toward understanding. We lost our children because of a faulty heater. Amina's mother often told the families who came seeking help, but we had already lost them once because of our faulty thinking. Don't make the same mistake we did. 6 months after the tragedy, the 2 families gathered at the cemetery where Amina and Farhan were buried. They had commissioned a shared headstone, engraved with both their names and a simple epitaph. Love found a way. As they placed fresh flowers on the grave, Zara noticed an elderly couple watching them from a distance. It was the building manager and his wife from the apartment where Amina and Farhan had lived. "We come every week," the woman explained when Zara approached them. "We feel responsible even though we didn't know about the heater." "You shouldn't blame yourselves," Zara told them. "We all carry enough blame already." The old woman nodded sadly. "They were so happy, you know. In those 2 days, I saw them on their balcony laughing together. At least they had that." It was true. In their brief time together as husband and wife, Amina and Farhan had known happiness. They had created a small world of their own, where love mattered more than tradition or family approval. It hadn't been enough time, nowhere near enough, but it had been something real and precious. As news of the Foundation's work spread, their story touched more lives. Young couples found courage in their example. Parents became more willing to listen rather than judge. Safety regulations were tightened across the city, with other municipalities following suit. The contractor responsible for the faulty installation was sentenced to 5 years in prison for criminal negligence. The building owner was fined heavily and required to install proper safety measures in all his properties. It didn't ease the pain of loss, but it provided some sense of justice. 1 year after Amina and Farhan's deaths, their families organized a memorial service that doubled as a community awareness event about carbon monoxide safety. Hundreds attended, including many couples who had received support from the Foundation. "Our children's story ends with tragedy," Farhan's father said, addressing the gathered crowd. "But the lesson of their lives is not about how they died. It's about how they lived, with the courage to choose love over tradition, happiness over approval," Amina's mother added, her voice steady despite her tears. "If they were here, I believe they would tell us not to let fear or pride keep us from embracing love wherever we find it. That would be their legacy, not the tragedy that took them, but the love that brought them together." As the sun set over Lahore that evening, casting long shadows across the city, the families stood together, bound by loss but also by a new understanding. They had learned too late to accept their children's choice, but perhaps their story would help others learn this lesson in time. In death, Amina and Farhan had accomplished what they couldn't in life. They had brought their families together. They had challenged outdated traditions, and they had reminded everyone that life is too short and too precious to waste on anger and rejection when love is offering a different path.